Seeing that we have a quorum, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's the September 17th meeting of the Murfreesboro Historic Zoning Commission. We have public comments today, Amelia.
We do not have anybody who has requested public comments on the agenda today.
Would you mind introducing our two new commissioners, please?
I will introduce them and ask that they each say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the historic preservation or to the
Before we
historic
start,
zoning.
Are we being recorded or videotaped?
Supposed to be, I don't know. Did they turn it on, Matthew?
It's always good to
Is
know.
there-
when
is there a
someone's
button to turn
recording
it?
Yes, I'm operating.
What's his name came, Marcus came up here, so it should be on, right?
It's on.
It's on, okay. I don't know about all this electronic stuff, but yes, it is being recorded. So, Mike Panesi is new this time around, and so if you would just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your background with historic zoning.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Panesi. Quick little backstory. I lived in Murfreesboro for about 12 years. Most recently moved back from Nolensville, though. Kind of took a little hiatus, moved out to Nolensville, renovated a house and back. Prior to that, I served on a lot of boards in Murfreesboro, still currently do. While I was in Nolensville, though, I've served on the Historic Zoning Commission there as well. So moving back to Murfreesboro, I knew that was something that I wanted to get back involved with. And, I've known Bill for a long time and had a love of the history of Murfreesboro, especially our historic district, and wanted to be involved in any way possible. And thanks to Greg, of course, as well, too, for helping me steer my path.
And then we have Brian Prince, who is our Planning Commission representative since Chase Salas has decided to take a break from public life. So Brian, welcome and thank you very much.
I know, why do you leave, right? My name's Brian Prince, and I'm from the Planning Commission. I moved here in 1993 to go to MTSU and never left. So, MTSU alumni, and I got two daughters. One's in Auburn, and the other's a senior at PCA.
Nice.
Well, thank you on behalf of the commission.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank you.
your willingness to serve. I can see a future chairman in Mike, I believe. The kind of leadership qualities that we're all looking for.
That would be after Deborah.
After Deborah, future, I said not. Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Can I get one?
So approved. Second. And approved.
All in favor? Oh, we roll call on this one, Amelia? Ashley, your turn.
Ms. Anderson,
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Backlund,
Aye.
Mr. Becker,
Aye.
Mr. Jakes,
Aye.
Mr. Panesi,
Aye.
Mr. Prince,
Aye.
Mr. Thompson,
Approved.
Vice Chair Belcher. Aye. Chair Davis.
Aye. Okay, Amelia, I'll let you take over with our agenda now, if you don't mind.
Okay, we've got two presentations for y'all today. One is going to be by our legal department, Mr. John Tooley, and his is going to be just a Historic Zoning Commission overview and what your responsibilities are on the board, and give a little bit of clarification as to where that goes. When he is completed, then Emily Huffer, from the preservation planner for the city of Franklin, is going to give us a presentation that's going to be, it'll be about administrative versus COA historic zoning approvals, as well as dabbling in a little bit of materials and different things that have to do with historic preservation. And that was totally selfish on my part. So if you don't mind, we'll go ahead and get started with John. If I can get my-
John, 1 minute. Y'all will see here that there's Q&A following the presentation.
That is correct.
Feel free to ask any questions.
Okay.
Oh, where's my little thingy? Nope. Well, I guess I'm just gonna have to scroll through everything. John, you wanna control your mouse?
Sure.
Here you go.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right.
Good afternoon, Chair Davis, members of the commission. As Amelia said, my name is John Tully. I'm Assistant City Attorney. And I'll be presenting just kind of an overview of historic zoning in general. I know we have a couple of new members here on the commission, as well as the some of the sources for your powers, your duties, and some of the specific guidelines that apply to the properties in the historic district. And then, as Amelia said, if you do have any questions, do feel free to ask it. So I'll start with what is the purpose of historic zoning? This is the primary source of your powers come from the Tennessee legislature. The Tennessee legislature enables municipalities to create historic districts. And the purpose as defined by the legislature is to promote the welfare of the people of the state, as well as to strengthen the economy in several ways, including improving property values, encouraging rehabilitation and preserving historic buildings. And then kind of accepting the mantle from the legislature, the city of Murfreesboro, of course, created the Historic Zoning Commission and the Historic District Overlay in Chapter 24 of the zoning ordinance. And the goal, as the city council defines it, is to protect and preserve the historic and architectural value, aesthetic, to strengthen the economy, to attract tourists and visitors, and of course to promote education. Next, what is a historic district in general? This is, according to the legislature, a definable area that possesses a significant individual structure or a concentration of sites or buildings that are united by past events or united aesthetically. For a historic district to be created, it has to be one of these five criteria. It has to be associated with a significant event in history, associated with a significant person in history. And then this third one is kind of the primary goal here in Murfreesboro. They contain structures that embody distinctive characteristics of a type or period or method of construction, the work of a master, possess high artistic values, or represent a significant or distinguishable entity as a whole. Or then, of course, it could be, a historic district could be one that's likely to yield archaeological significance or that's listed on the National Register. So this, I'm sure Emily can talk much more about this than I can, but I'll give you a brief summary of the Certified Local Government Program. This is a federal program that provides technical assistance and grants to certain certified local governments. Murfreesboro has been such a local government since 2003. The benefits of this program is it provides technical assistance and training sessions, networking meetings, and also priority access to grant funding through the Historic Preservation Fund grants. And there are certain requirements that the city must comply with to maintain our certified local government status. And we currently do these and will continue to do so. It includes having a historic zoning ordinance that's enforced by a zoning commission, maintaining a system to survey properties, submitting annual report to the Tennessee Historical Commission. Any decisions on certificates of appropriateness must be made in writing, and must fill commission vacancies within 60 days and provide for public participation. Of course, we do all of these things and will continue to do so in the future. So here in Murfreesboro, we have one historic district called East Main Street District. This is a map of the district. You'll notice the shading on the map are two national register districts. But the bold outline is what the actual historic overlay district comprises. And in conjunction with creating that overlay, the commission also promulgated guidelines that apply to that district. And as the commission identified, the historic district is the location of Murfreesboro's most significant concentration of residential structures built from the 1830s to the 1940s. And the district has two primary characterizations, again, as identified by the commission. One is the stylistic variety of the buildings within the district. And the second, a bit counterintuitively, is its consistency. So for the stylistic variety, I found this particularly interesting because the result of that variety is The guidelines say that the commission should look at each structure as an individual entity. And so any changes to that structure should be respectful of the history of that particular building. So one example where this comes into play is if someone wants to paint a brick structure. Regardless of whether their neighbors have painted their brick structures, if that structure itself has not been painted in the past, it wouldn't be appropriate for someone to paint it. But their neighbors could if that was in the history of their houses. And so you're supposed to look at each structure individually in the history of that particular house. And then, of course, there's the consistency, which even with the architectural variety, the district as a whole has what the commission identified as rhythm and harmony due to the setbacks, the sizes of the buildings, the material, things of that nature. So some requirements of the commission members. Of course, the commission is made up of 9 members. It has to include at least 1 architect, 1 member of the planning commission, and 1 representative of a local patriotic or historic organization. Members are appointed to a 5-year term, which ends on June 30th of the relevant year. If a member fails to attend 3 consecutive meetings, if the board so chooses, the chair can recommend to the city council that a vacancy be declared, and vacancies must be filled within 60 days. The conflict of interest rule provides that no member should participate in either debate or decision when the member or family member of the 4th degree has a direct pecuniary interest in the property that's under consideration. And then if you as members act within your powers provided under the zoning ordinance, you'll be relieved of any personal liability for any damage that be defended by the city. So to go into a little more detail about the commission's powers, of course the commission can recommend additions to historic districts or the creation of new districts. It can recommend guidelines for historic districts, both of which the commission has done. The primary function is issuing or denying certificates of appropriateness for properties within the district. And then the commission also has the power to physically inspect properties within this jurisdiction, including making examinations and surveys. It should be noted, as I'll get to later though, that inspection is only the external portion of the property. The commission cannot enter property without the permission of the property owner. Again, because this is kind of the primary function, I'll go into a little bit of detail about the procedure for considering a certificate of appropriateness. The commission can request detailed construction plans and any data that the commission deems pertinent to the proposal. And then within 30 days of receiving what the commission determines to be sufficient data, the commission must either issue a certificate of appropriateness, either with or without conditions, or direct the refusal of the building permit and providing the grounds for the refusal in writing. So the guidelines provide that when you're considering a certificate of appropriateness, there are some prime considerations that you should keep in mind. The first is, of course, the historical or architectural value of the structure that's being considered, and its relationship of exterior architectural features of surrounding structures, the general compatibility of the design, and in any other factor, including aesthetic factors, that you deem pertinent. And then some additional duties of the commission is to determine the appropriateness of altering or demolishing any building within the district, to determine the appropriateness of external architectural features of any new buildings, exterior design of any new extension of the building, determining the appropriateness of the yard surrounding a building, public sidewalks, anything that might affect the character of any building within the district, and then general compatibility of the exterior design, exterior materials of the building in question and in relation to the surrounding buildings. But this is important to keep in mind. Certain things the commission should not consider is any interior arrangement or design. So if someone wants to do a renovation of the kitchen, they can do so without permission of the commission. It's only external features that we look at. And also, you shouldn't make any requirements except for the purpose of preventing extensions that are incongruous to the historical aspects of the surroundings, or as I said before, enter into a building in the district without permission. So here I have some sort of the effect of the guidelines on properties that are within the historic district. The first thing to keep in mind is the historic district is an overlay on top of the pre-existing zoning categories. So any use that will be permitted in the underlying zoning is permitted within the district. The other factor here, and this is sort of the primary enforcement mechanism for the guidelines, is that a building permit is required for any new alterations, additions, or demolitions, or new construction, which either alters or contributes to the exterior appearance, or which would have been required had it not been for the historic district. And then, as I said before, no building permit will be issued by the city departments within the district unless the permit is first submitted to and approved by the Historic Zoning Commission. Now, there are other requirements of property owners. One is that they must maintain their properties, but they must refrain from any destructive cleaning methods like sandblasting. They have to remedy dangerous conditions. The other thing to keep in mind is that the commission does not review or regulate paint colors, but you can provide advice if a property owner requests it. And then the other feature to keep in mind is that while fences generally aren't in the district, they may be added if they're of similar material to nearby fences and if they don't disrupt the visual harmony. And the guidelines list certain preferred fencing materials. And then to get into a little more detail about the certificate of appropriateness process, again, this can't be overstated. The guidelines only apply to the exterior buildings and areas that are visible from public streets and sidewalks. And then there are sort of three primary types of certificates of appropriateness. There's alterations, new construction, and demolition. And then, of course, there's also in the guidelines for moving properties, but that doesn't happen as often. So for alterations, the first thing to keep in mind is that buildings do change over time, and the changes may have acquired historic significance of their own. And so just because someone wants to take a building back to a prior period of time, they should respect the changes that have been made over time to the extent possible. Of course, for alterations, we want to avoid removal or alteration of any historical feature or architectural features, historical material, I apologize. And architectural features should be repaired rather than replaced to the extent possible, or if replaced, to be done so with the original material that would have been used. The other consideration is that contemporary design for alterations is allowed, so long as the alterations don't destroy any significant historical or cultural material, and the design is compatible with the neighborhood. And of course, any alteration should be removable in the future. And then for new construction, again, the district features a variety of types and styles of architecture, and new construction should continue that, but of course must complement properties around it. And new construction should be consistent with existing buildings in the street in terms of the height, scale, et cetera. And then for demolition, the guidelines have the specific requirements for when demolition will be permitted. The first is when the building has lost any architectural or historical importance, and the removal wouldn't have a negative effect on the district. The second would be if the building in the first place doesn't contribute to the historical nature of the district, and so removal would actually be positive. And then third is, of course, if the denial of demolition would result in an economic hardship to the owner. You need to keep that in mind. And then the last thing I have is just a little bit on how the guidelines are enforced. Again, the primary method is that building permits are required to do anything exterior within the district, and no city department should issue a building permit without a certificate of appropriateness first coming from the zoning commission. Any violations of the ordinance can be punishable up to $50 a day. And then if a person threatens or is about to perform work that would violate the ordinance, then the city attorney's office can seek an injunction to prevent them from doing so. So that's the end of mine. And then, as I said, after Emily has her presentation, we can take questions on either of ours.
Just sit or you get up, you do whatever you want.
Well, I'll get up.
Okay, you can
Stretch just a little bit. Does it matter where I stand? No? Okay. So,
Is it touch screen?
oh, it's touchscreen. Well, I'll play Vanna White for a minute. So I'm so grateful to speak to y'all today. My name's Emily Hupper. I am the Historic Preservation Planner for the City of Franklin. I've been with the city for 2 years, starting next month. My first position there, I was the Assistant Preservation Planner, and I was in that role for about a year. And then I was promoted last September. And so then I just celebrated my my year in this role, but it'll be my 2 years next month. So anyway, so I'm very grateful to work for the City of Franklin. A little bit about my background. I am from Winchester, Deckard area, so I've lived in Middle Tennessee my whole life. I moved up here to Murfreesboro. I attended MTSU for undergrad, and my bachelor's degree is in history with a minor in communications and then economics and finance. And then I decided to get my master's degree at MTSU, and it's in public history with an emphasis in historic preservation. And so I graduated from that master's program last May, and so while I was working for the city, I wrote my thesis on a historic Rosenwald school in Winchester. So a lot of juggling, but I'm kind of glad to be done with that, but it was a great experience getting all that done. So let's see, jumping into everything. So today I have like a smattering of everything, I'm sure you all know majority of this, but to kind of give an overview of what we're kind of just going to discuss, it's mainly like the difference between contributing and non-contributing buildings, what are the design guidelines and a certificate of appropriateness, what triggers needing to receive a certificate of appropriateness, when would a project need to come to a design review committee meeting and a historic zoning commission, or if the proposal can be approved by staff. We have an example of an outreach we did here within the past couple months, and just kind of a general overview of the review processes and deadlines. Ooh, I think I zoomed in, sorry. Okay, so we kind of touched on the historic preservation overlay. So this is what we call it in Franklin. It's kind of been blanket kind of planning tool that we use to protect the character of the community's historic resources. And so it's just kind of an on top kind of blanket kind of look of it being in the historic areas. So it is designated by an ordinance by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and I think that the City of Murfreesboro calls it City Council, but it's the same thing. Okay, so why do we preserve sites and structures? Historic preservation revitalizes downtowns and encourages heritage tourism. There have been findings in both the United States and internationally that indicate that heritage visitors stay longer, visit more places, and spend more per day than tourists with no interest in historic resources. And additionally, historic preservation studies or appreciates property values. And over the last 15 years, property values in historic preservation and neighborhood conservation overlay districts in Nashville have outperformed the rest of the city. So here's an example here in Franklin of a non-contributing building versus a contributing building. So this is kind of, if you all are familiar with Franklin, so kind of near the factory area, we have a little pocket neighborhood that is on Winslow Drive and Miles Manor Court. And so the lots were subdivided, and then this house was created. Well, it went through the Historic Zoning Commission and then was ultimately approved. It was approved in 2021 and just has kind of finished up building. And so it is considered non-contributing because it is less than 50 years old and it's a new site. This contributing building is within one of our gateways into downtown. It's on 3rd Avenue South. And so it is deemed contributing within the National Register of Historic Places within our downtown district. So moving on, so this is just a screenshot within our design guidelines. And so we determine if a building is residential or non-residential, and then if it is historic or non-historic. So we look at kind of the building form, if it is residential, even if a business is in the residential house. We look at, you know, the roof pitch and that sort of thing. So for the residential buildings, we kind of have it's more strict than the non-historic residential buildings. And our design guidelines, I'm sure y'all's are as well, they are rooted in the Secretary of Interior standards from the National Park Service. So here is a map of our historic preservation overlay. We have 7 local historic districts and we have 12 local landmarks. And so what a local landmark is, let's see, I don't think it's on this map. So it is kind of in, so like one is kind of like over here in this area on the other side of I-65, and it's the John Henry Carruthers House. And it is a historic African-American farmstead. And so whenever new construction, new development is happening, a really cool thing that the city does is that they require parkland development fees. And so that the new developments have to incorporate a certain amount of green space and such within their new development. And so on this site of the John Henry Carruthers house, the house was there. And so the developers were like, we really don't know what to do with this. And so the city sat and talked with them, and so we kind of created a plan of saving that house. So that was their exchange of their parkland development fee, was saving that house. And so the MTSU Center for Historic Preservation, the folks with them, they came out and kind of did an assessment of the site of how to best cases of like preservation, and it's almost wrapped up. I've been inside of it like twice now, and first time, I'm not gonna lie, was a little scary. You had to really kind of watch where you were stepping, and you know, but it's almost done. We're hoping to have it kind of completed, I think, in the spring. And there's going to be a museum in that house now, which is just fantastic. And with that site, there's going to be a greenway bicycle kind of area, so that it'll connect, I forget which greenway, but it's going to connect to Brentwood too. And it's just going to really open up that area and let, you know, more people know about it. Additionally, we have 9 parks within our historic preservation overlay. We have Harlansdale Farm up here, and if y'all have heard about Pilgrimage, that is where that is. It's happening this weekend. Then we have Roper's Knob. We have Bicentennial Park. We have Fort Granger. We have Pinkerton Park. We have Carter Hill Park. We have Collins Farm. We have Eastern Plain, and then we have Winstead Hill. The majority of these parks have involvement with like Civil War battles and just kind of associations with that. So here's kind of our cover for our historic district guidelines, and it just addresses exterior changes in material and design. And like y'all's, our commission is composed of 9 members, and within the city, we have several properties that are in a contract with the state. So it's just another level. So like Harlansdale Farm, they are in a covenant easement. So that means basically that they took money from the state, and so they have to not only abide by the Historic Zoning Commission in in Franklin, and then abide by the State Historic Preservation Office kind of for interior and exterior changes. So a really good example of that is at the Harlansdale Farm, we recently helped renovate the Hayes House. And if y'all haven't had a chance to look at the Hayes House, it is fantastic. They worked, the Friends of Franklin Parks, which is a nonprofit organization, they helped raise money to rehabilitate the house. And anyway, it is just fabulous. fabulous. And they're, you know, taking tours, and they're gonna eventually have it open, so if you wanna have an event there, you can. So our Historic Zoning Commission meets on the second Monday of every month, and like you all, they review applications and the staff reports and vote on the proposals and issues a certificate of appropriateness. So we also offer a design review committee meeting. And so this is an informal meeting that meets on the third Monday of every month. And so we highly, highly, highly recommend applicants to attend. And it's really helpful for the applicants and the commission and even staff to kind of really understand the design, understand kind of how it's configured. So we had our design review committee meeting last night. And so one of the applications was to have an addition on an 1866 house. And then they already had an addition from 1936. And so it was how to configure it so it was most appropriate to the house and it didn't overwhelm the house. And it was actually the second time this applicant's been in, and her project's moving right on along, and so she'll actually come and apply probably to the October Historic Zoning Commission meeting for the COA. So what needs a COA? So site alterations such as grading, new sidewalks, commercial lighting, if you're altering your driveway, new fencing, if there's a new addition to a building, if a new building is proposed to be constructed, the rehabilitation of the exterior of a building. We hope never demolition, but it happens, and relocation. And then we also require a COA for signage, except for temporary banners that are up for less than 90 days. So here's just a funny for you all that a COA is required prior to a building permit, and so here's an example of what our COA looks like. So this one was one that the city actually, they were the applicant on. They came before the Historic Zoning Commission. So at Hollinsdale Farm, the interurban railroad ran on Franklin Road, and it connected Franklin to Nashville. And so part of kind of retelling that history is that they poured a strip of concrete. I could probably read how long, a 400-foot stamped concrete walkway. And so on that on the concrete, they stamped a railroad track to emulate the interurban railroad. And so this did come before the Historic Zoning Commission for review and approval, and then it went on to the SHPO, or the State Historic Preservation Office. So what doesn't need a COA? And so it's kind of like minor in-kind replacement of like wood siding. If someone has like in-kind replacement of roofing, so like shingle for shingle. And if it's, or even standing seam metal and standing seam metal, that would be an appropriate replacement, and it doesn't need to come for review from the commission. And then, or if it's just kind of like routine maintenance, like restaining wood and repainting wood that's already been painted, you can go ahead and proceed with that. Okay, keep zooming in. Okay. Okay. So our application processes, it involves, applying to a historic zoning meeting, or preferably after a design review committee meeting for a COA, and then attending that meeting for the commission to vote on that item. For an administrative review, it involves applying for that administrative COA, and then if everything is complete within the application, then we can review it as staff, and then we have a 10 business day turnaround to issue that certificate of appropriateness if it meets our design guidelines for signage and rear yard fencing. So, kind of delving into that a little bit more, what more can the historic zoning review versus administratively has to be reviewed? So historic zoning, exterior changes in material and design, demolition, new construction, and then additions. So for administratively, new signage can be approved by preservation planning staff awning installation and replacement, rear yard fencing, mechanical equipment installation, and minor alterations to non-historic parts on buildings or on obscure facades. So here recently, we've had a couple really bad storms. Well, not recently, I guess within the past year, we've had some bad storms. And so we always recommend to applicants and even city staff that, we recommend contacting preservation planning staff and our building and neighborhood services department to let us know that there is damage and help guide them to their next steps. So we always recommend, tarping buildings and providing safety measures to maintain the well-being of the public, and is supported and does not need prior approval at all. And depending on the amount of damage, staff can approve emergency actions to inform the Historic Zoning Commission of changes. We will need lots of photos, lots of documentation, so we can inform our Historic Zoning Commission of that damage. So an example, so in 2021, I feel like all I'm doing is talking about Harlesdale Farm, but we have a lot of examples there. So a really big windstorm happened, and so if you've been on site there, so we have our main barn, and this brick building was called the powerhouse. And so a big gust of wind came in and just completely demolished it. And so we collaboratively worked with our parks department, our planning department, and our building and neighborhood services department to help mitigate the damage and how to address the next steps. And that is within our zoning ordinance that we could go ahead and act and have these measures to protect the well-being of the public. And after that was, all those steps were taken, then we were able to take photos and email and update our commission of what had happened. So here is our Historic Zoning Commission and Design Review Committee, our deadlines and our meeting dates. Historic Zoning meets second Monday of every month, and the DRC meets on the third Monday of every month. Okay, so we just recently updated our application user guide. We received some feedback from several applicants of that the process wasn't as smooth, or they were having some hiccups with it. So we went and updated our user guide. What do I click on it? Okay, great. So this, if you click on this, it'll take you to our City of Franklin Certificate of Appropriateness page. And so it kind of gives you the overview of kind of like suggested steps. We always recommend kind of having like a preliminary meeting with staff, and then attend the design review committee meeting, and then apply for a certificate of appropriateness. So, let's see. Sorry. So, if you, let's see. Yeah, here it is. Our checklist. So our checklist kind of includes suggested things to, that we recommend whenever applicants apply. So like if it is exterior alterations, we recommend a written description of the project and the proposed materials, photographs of the project site location, architectural elevations or drawings, specification information for any proposed materials or architectural features, a 3D window diagram with the historic profile detailed of the sill, the trim, the insets from the exterior wall, and documentation of earlier historic appearance, if that's for like just restoration, and then a signed and notarized owner affidavit. And so same thing with signs that could not be administratively approved, fencing, awnings, HVAC, and then relocation, and then demolition. touchscreen. Hopefully, whenever we get a new city hall, we're going through the process of kind of designing our new city hall. So fingers crossed that that gets approved within the next couple of months, because our current city hall is past its prime. Okay, so an example of an outreach program that we did, and I brought copies for everyone. We had feedback from several of our tenants and business owners that they bought property and they didn't realize that they were in the historic districts.
Exactly.
And so, yeah.
Thanks, Emily.
Uh-huh. And so we were working with our historic zoning commission. So we worked with our historic zoning commission, and we're like, we need some kind of something to send out to property owners, tenants that are maybe renting. What do y'all recommend? And so they were like, absolutely do not send a mailed up piece of paper, because we will throw it away. And I was like, oh, great. And so we were like, well, one of them suggested, why don't you do a postcard? So we're like, okay, great. So then we went to UPS there in Franklin, and we're like, okay, so here's what we're thinking. And our first design had all kinds of information, because I'm like, we need to get all the information we need to on this postcard so everyone knows what they can and can't do. And so UPS, they were like, well, this is great, but people are still gonna throw this away. And we're like, okay. So they recommended maybe utilizing something that people would want to keep. So having a historic photograph and then having, helpful information on the back, so that people will want to keep it for this, but then they can flip it over and be like, oh, so you mean I can't put up a fence without a COA? I'll know that. So we have had, these went out in early July, and we have had great feedback from everyone in the community. We've had several people contact us, and they're like, hey, so I got your postcard in the mail, and I have already put up an awning. Can I get on the agenda so I can get approval? And so we were like, yes. So we're very grateful that this has gone over really well, and that everyone's been really receptive of this. So to recap, some general rules of thumb. For us, we recommend setting up a pre-app meeting with staff prior to applying, so we can assist applicants in what to include in their applications. And then we always recommend if any structure, fence, or alteration to the site is discussed, we always recommend to consulting with preservation staff to see if the alteration needs a COA from the commission, from staff, or if it can just be considered minor repair. And so that's it. But happy to answer any questions if y'all have any.
Okay, those were both great, and so we'll move to the Q&A part and open the floor.
Okay, Emily, you just addressed what's been a real problem for us. And our frustration, or at least my frustration, has been, why can't we get something into the hands or get a rule, whatever it takes, to be sure that the realtor who is selling a property in the historic zoning, get it into the new owner's hands, that there are rules and regulations. And, I mean, this sounds great. Amelia and her predecessor put together a great mailer for all the new owners in our historic districts. And I don't really know, I don't know if we've gotten much feedback from that or not, Amelia.
The COAs are up. People are actually, talking to us about them
Are they?
before they do it. Yeah, it has helped.
But it seems to me I mean, okay, you come in our historic district, you have a realtor, he or she is showing you this property, and they mention nothing about there are rules and regulations here. So I get really tired of people coming to us for forgiveness. Should we forgive them or not?
Well-
I mean, I don't know, just help us out here.
So we've had several instances here recently of the same kind of thing of realtors didn't disclose that. And so the applicants will just go ahead and start doing work. And so we don't know until like staff drives by or like even historic zoning commissioner drives by, and then they'll call us and they're like, hey, so like to give y'all an example, on our 3rd Avenue South, so the main, one of thoroughfares into downtown, our historic zoning commissioner called us and he's like, hey, the house that was approved like a couple months back, there's only 3 walls remaining. And we were like, what do you mean? Is this April Fool's? You know, like, what's going on? And so we walked down, and sure enough, it was just the front wall and then parts of the side walls. They had received COA for an addition out the back, but they didn't receive a COA or a building permit to do anything with the roof.
So what are you doing to them?
So I believe that they had, it was almost an emergency situation that they needed to come into the Historic Zoning Commission, and the commission deemed that they needed to put the roof back exactly how it was. Because their plan was, well, we wanted to just raise the roof just a couple inches, which that really would change the form of the whole house. And so they came back multiple different Historic Zoning Commission meetings because they didn't have all of the numbers, and then they couldn't provide us what the roof pitch was going to be. And so it ended up being kind of a lengthy process that, and we still can't decide if it was the contractor or the homeowner, but the right hand kind of wasn't talking to the left hand in a way. And so, but yeah, we've been trying to be a little bit more out and about of, trying to be helpful to people. And another thing that we're looking at doing is talking to like realtors that sometimes they have like monthly meetings. And so I know that the previous preservation planner with the city of Franklin, she went and spoke to several different realtor organizations to kind of give a background of, if a property is in the historic preservation overlay, they have to receive a COA. And so that's what we're trying to do now, trying to kind of get back in front of people. But the mailer, I will say, has been a great step forward in that.
Because it's, you get tired of forgiving people because you really don't know if they knew. And you have your doubts about that. And sometimes we've made decisions that I haven't been proud of to let them carry on, vinyl windows. Just the little things like that, but they're not really little things because we have rules and regulations, and even if we do get a nickname for being strict, I've always looked to I've always heard about the Franklin Historic Commission, and just what a great job has been done all these years, going back, I don't know when you were first established, but it's been a long time, and it just seems so preserved. It's a good experience to go to Franklin.
I think that it was in the 90s when the Historic Zoning Commission.
Okay.
1990 is what I saw.
Okay, yeah.
What's that again, John?
I said 1990 is what I saw. The Tennessee Historic Commission has all of the certified local governments in the state in the year that they became CLG. And I believe Franklin was 1990.
You've grown to 7?
We have 7 historic districts, and some are, so it kind of gets in the gray area of some are local historic districts and some are National Register historic districts. And so with that, if they can come about So to give you an example, our Franklin Road Historic District, so that encompasses everything, so like the factory, all the way going up to kind of like Matt Hatcher Boulevard, Lance Boulevard. We just say Matt Hatcher. That's the Franklin Road, and so that one is a local historic district. But in Hinchyville, that's the first subdivision that was created right off of downtown. That's on the National Register one.
But that both come to you all?
They both, yes ma'am.
We had a couple, both of whom were realtors. They found it hard to believe that neither one knew a thing about that, but they started renovating their house without any approval. And then they got caught and came to us, and we forced them to put the wood windows back on the front elevation to size we were less concerned about. We preferred it, but and we didn't care about the back because we reviewed it primarily from the right-of-way. But I'm convinced a lot of them just like, you're not going to tell me what to do, and I know you've experienced that.
Yeah. There's an instance in, within, I guess, the past year and a half, we've had one that is, it's going to be, they want to demolish it. And so the owner was like, well, I didn't know it was a historic house, and I just want to demolish it. And so it's gone to our city court, and now it's going to go to our county court because there's bonds addressed with it and everything. And so that's a whole other process of,
Because it hasn't been maintained?
because it hasn't been maintained, and it's been neglected for so long. And then there were
Demolition by neglect. In Nashville, you go to codes and they pull up an address and it talks about the various places you have to go to get approval. And if it's in an historic district, there's a little box they have to check. It's already checked for you. You're in historic.
Yeah.
And so to me, it'd be an easy enough thing. I'm not a computer guru, I couldn't do it. But if the codes could go in and get all the various districts that have any review by our committee and label them, so when someone goes and buys the property, it automatically flags, hey, you're in a historic district. That would be an easy fix in my mind.
Right. I will say, if someone is pulling a building permit in City of Franklin, it automatically, and it has to go through the online like plans review, it automatically puts me and Elizabeth Boulay, who's the assistant preservation planner, she and I have to review it. And so we have if it's an exterior alteration, we review the COA and the building permit plans. So everything matches up, but still, sometimes we're put on things even if it's an interior alteration, but sometimes things still slip through the crack of contractors were like, oh, I thought I could just change out this window, or I thought I could do this, and we're like, nope. You have to go back to the commission if you want to change that.
So if they put in any windows, whether it's like for like or not, they gotta go before the board? No approvals of windows administratively?
So if it's on the rear, it was in an existing window opening and it's kind of like for like, we can issue an administrative COA for that. But typically the commission is very hands-on with windows.
Yeah.
Emily, can you talk a little bit about who's on your design review committee?
Sure. So the design review committee meetings, it has our historic zoning commission. It's those folks that everyone. And so it's not a mandatory meeting for everyone on the commission to attend our our design review committee meeting. So we have the 9 members of the commission, and so like last night for our design review committee meeting, we had 4 members attend. And I do believe our bylaws were changed a couple years back so that it was originally like a rotating 3 that were on the design review committee meetings, but then it changed so whoever wanted to come could attend those meetings.
So is there a minimum?
No. Although we do try and like to have more than 2, so it's just not someone leading the meeting, kind of giving feedback, and then one other person kind of giving feedback. We like for there to be multiple voices giving feedback.
Is there any additional fees for these reviews?
Nope. No, we do not charge for anyone applying for an administrative COA, a regular COA, to attend a historic zoning meeting, or a design review committee meeting.
No charges, huh?
Isn't that a complaint we've heard from some people? Jeff?
No, I'm not gonna, don't remember.
I don't know what ours are. I don't know what our fees are. I mean,
150 for,
150 for COA for seeing you all, or 75 for administrative. We took off the 75 administrative and we started having people come in,
very good move.
and we have to take it to council to get it approved. So we had to put it back on till we can get it to council to get it approved.
John, you may not know the answer to this, you haven't been here long, but was the ordinance amended when with the core overlay, or Matthew, when the core overlay district was put in, was the historic zoning ordinance amended then? Are we still under the original ordinance?
Yeah, the city core overlay district adoption and subsequent amendments did not affect the historic zone.
Has anything, have we ever amended the ordinance designating the district?
The standards or the?
No, the actual ordinance. Has there ever been a reason to?
Seems like there was something in 2012.
Greg, you remember anything? I mean,
There's not been anything since I've been here, but it seems like there was something in 2012 that
That's-
Robert,
I want to say that when Robert Lewis was advising y'all, there were some things that he had to end up, taking to city council.
that's what I was.
But that was quite a number of years ago.
and then when you all changed the fee, that had to go
Yeah.
to
Yes.
council.
Yeah, the fees are adopted by resolution.
And that was in early 2019.
I know we had a review here with the commission, with the city about the various ordinances we review by, because I remember pressuring or presenting that we need to be more responsible to reviewing like dormers and fire chimneys. Anyway, we tweaked it here and there, but I don't know that that's answering your question, but we did tweak it then. And it would have to go
It would have to have gone to
the city
to do
council.
that. And I think there was something that was done when Robert was here that was,
It was before 12 because that's when I left town.
okay.
I will say that the current guidelines say that they were approved by council in 2015. I don't know what they looked like before that. There was at least a change to
So the
guidelines.
guidelines that are
The
online,
current guidelines say it was approved by city council in 2015, so there was some change. made there, presumably.
something, I thought so. I wonder if that was when Robert was.
Robert was still doing it then.
Yeah.
Robert advised y'all from probably 2000 until 2019.
And he had done it in Shelbyville too, or Nashville too, right?
Well, he had worked with the state previously. I don't know if he did historic zoning with the other communities he worked for when he was with the state Department of Local Planning.
Well, since Emily's donating her time, any more questions for her? I hope you are donating your time, right?
I had a question. You had mentioned a nonprofit that works with you all, that assists on certain projects. Is that just single individual projects? Do they, what all do y'all have several nonprofits that work with y'all?
So that's the Friends of Franklin Parks. And so they typically are assisting with our parks department in kind of establishing and raising funds for things involved with the parks. So recently they helped rehabilitate the Hayes House. They just released their plan to do a dollar-for-dollar match with the city of Franklin so that they can rehabilitate the tenant homes that are on the Harlansdale Farm. There's 4, and so they're proposing to rehabilitate 2 of them, and they are in less than desired shape. And so they're really hoping to get that going, and so it's just a really great example of what kind of cities, they have more kind of rigid standards of like purchasing and procurement and everything, but because it's a nonprofit, they can kind of, you don't have to get like 3 bids for a roof. They can just proceed with whichever vendor they want to. And so they typically do jobs related with the parks. Another example they did at Harlansdale Farm, they had a pedestrian bridge that connected the farm with another kind of greenway, so it just expanded, you know, walkability within the city and everything.
And I have a question too. You talked about your 8 districts in Franklin. Was there a big, how did those drives get started? Did those people just kind of do that on their own? And then they came and said, we'd like for you to consider a historic district? I'm not quite sure about how that gets started in Franklin.
Sure, so there's kind of 2 avenues that you can take. The first one is if it's kind of really grassroots led. So an example of like our Hinchyville neighborhood, so that's the one that's really kind of in our downtown area. The neighbors, they really wanted to be a part of the historic preservation area and just have their homes protected, and they wanted to be a part of it. So they created a petition, and they had signatures of all the neighbors that wanted to be a part of the district. And they took it to our Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and they were like, we want to be a part of this overlay. And so the BOMA went ahead and they voted on it and they approved it. And then I believe then it went to the State Historic Preservation Office, and then they got it approved, and then it was later put on the National Register.
So that was an easy one.
So that is an easy way of getting that. The other way is kind of going through, so like our Franklin Road local historic district, it was put, so several of the aldermen, they were on a kind of preservation kind of platform whenever they were running for kind of their seats. They really pushed for that, and so that was one of their big things of they wanted that. So then they kind of created a big push and got signatures and kind of got everyone on board. And I believe that you have to have, I think it's 70% people on board, and then it can go ahead and proceed and be passed.
So that's 2 examples, bottom up and top down.
Yeah.
And that percentage is who determines the 70%?
I believe it's in our zoning ordinance, but underneath kind of like procedures, but I do believe, it might be by vote. I'm not exactly sure, but it's in our zoning ordinance.
Even the one that was bottom up, was it 100%?
I'm not exactly sure, but I know that there was a really big push for everyone on Fair Street, West Main Street. They all wanted the protection. And I'll give you an example. So our Natchez Street, it is on the National Register, but because it's on the National Register and it's not a local historic district, there aren't any local protections. So within that community, even though there are old homes, people can go in and tear them down, and that's what's happening. And so now we're getting tall skinnies that are going for $3 million in this neighborhood, which is just a flat out shame. But whenever it came, I forget, I think it was in the mid 2000, maybe 2012, several of the community members, they're like, we want to be a part of this overlay. And so they had several community meetings, and it turned out that not everyone was on board. And so they were like, we're going to have so many restrictions, we can't do what we want. And so therefore that didn't get passed. And so we've had several community members come up to us fairly recently, and they're like, we really wish we would have been a part of the overlay. We would have been protected. Our houses wouldn't have been torn down that have been here for 7,500 years. And so that's really kind of a sad turn of events. But within that neighborhood, we have 3 properties that have elected to be a part of the overlay. So they are protected.
Are they contiguous with the, are they contiguous with the existing district?
No. So they would be considered like our local landmark kind of ones, so that they are kind of standalone.
Sorry, David, go ahead.
They go, geez,
Unfortunately, yes, but
they don't want you to do that, really.
right, but these homes, they really wanted them to be, the property owners really wanted that, and so there was enough push for that, then they went ahead and proceeded and they got that approval.
Emily, when I was at your meeting, I picked up one of these.
Uh-huh.
This is a City of Franklin speaker card for the public comments section, portion of their agenda. What's our lead time, John, for public comments? You all don't have one, right? They can just show up and fill this out, turn it give it to the chair, is that correct?
Well, they can do it two ways. If they don't want to show up to the meeting, then they can email us at our planning intake email and submit a comment that way, and then it's submitted into our minutes and then sent to every commissioner. Or they can show up to the meeting and speak in favor or not in favor of that item with those cards.
I'm sorry, I've dominated this, I don't mean to.
I got a question for John about our commission.
Yes, sir.
On the page that has commission members, members are appointed to a 5-year term ending on June 30th. I hate to tell you, I'm in my 25th year. I don't know that I've been officially.
No, you get re-upped every
Five.
five administration. They do that every 5 years.
Okay.
They leave you on, they don't kick you off of it. They give you the option of being able to stay. And I thought they asked if you wanted to stay before they redid it. Did they not?
So somebody's controlling all that, because it's not everything that's anything that's brought up in our meeting.
Definitely not. Mayor and council appoint and reappoint, so typically what we'll do is when someone is up for reappointment, we'll contact them, make sure they want to be re-upped for another term. And, you know, if that's satisfactory to the mayor, of course, and then if so, the mayor will put it on a council agenda before the end of June to reappoint.
I want to think Gib was up. I want to think Gib was up, and I called and asked him.
So David, you must have been doing something right all these years.
Nobody asked. I just want to be legal.
We're just volunteering.
You're legal.
Saying yes, sure, that's right.
A question for Emily. Does your overlay zone go into your business district, and do you have the same design standards for those commercial buildings?
Great question. So let's see, I can just pull up. So we do have a different chapter for our commercial buildings. So our design guidelines are split into kind of 3 chapters. And so the first one is residential buildings, and so you can click on like historic residential buildings, additions, non-historic, new residential buildings, and then commercial buildings. And so it's historic ones, additions to historic ones, non-historic, and then new commercial ones. So you can click on it and be most specific if you wanted to go to roofs, if you wanted to look at, masonry, that sort of thing. So we do have different guidelines for commercial buildings.
How many different commercial districts do you have?
We just have the one, and it's just mainly the downtown one. But I will say so to kind of give y'all background of what we kind of have going on right now with at the factory there at Franklin, they're proposing a new hotel on the site, and it is considered a new commercial building, even though
In the historic district.
And so we have been working with the State Historic Preservation Office on, best case practices of, we recommend that, if the average building height is this, let me zoom in for us. Okay, that's better. So if the average building height on the block face is this purple line, then we recommend it should be within 10% of either below or above. So you don't have, kind of and then a big one or a really low one. And so this kind of is helping, with that. I will say across the street from the factory at Franklin, y'all probably saw on the news, it was the Middle 8 development, and it's multifamily housing and then some like single family housing. And so this was applied for that development as well, the new commercial buildings.
So is your council allowed to override your design with like a planned unit development, or do you guys get last say in?
So the zoning ordinance, this is kind of how I describe it to people, is zoning ordinance is kind of the base standards. It is a requirement, but our design guidelines are more restrictive and go on top of our zoning ordinance. But if there's ever differing kind of ones, like the guidelines are more restrictive than the zoning ordinance, we can bring that to the Historic Zoning Commission and say, while it doesn't meet the design guidelines, it does meet the zoning ordinance. And so the commission does approve things that way.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, before I ask for a motion to adjourn, who put this together?
Oh, that was me.
That was very user-friendly
Oh, thank
and
you.
very well done.
Thank you.
Both of them.
I appreciate both of them and what they did today. Just wanted to let everybody know before we adjourn in the staff reports and other business, you'll notice the 2 items that I placed on there. Those are what were
Oh, I'm sorry.
administratively approved since the last time we were here. I'm gonna start doing that, everything that's administratively approved. So y'all will be in the know if something's happening, whether they're on the list or not.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to answer a question that you mentioned, you brought up a couple minutes ago, as far as public comment, if people would come in. They can either call or email the city 6 hours before the meeting to be able to tell this.
Thanks, Ron, appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Ben, you're not leaving, are you?
I got it.
He's got daddy duty.
I'd love to comment on this, Amelia. Thank you for this administrative approval information, because when I saw one of these names pop up, I at first was a little alarmed, because I had talked to this neighbor and said, you need to go to the city, make sure you can replace your roof.
Yeah,
And
I
you
did.
may have to come before us, but since you're doing like kind, you should be okay.
Yeah.
So when I saw the name, I was afraid that they hadn't, and then I read it. So, but there are other projects that are ongoing in the district that we've not talked about, and I don't know if they've gotten administrative approval or if they will
There's
come
one that
before.
concerns me that I gave approval to for interior remodel, and they've got some wood stuff on holding up a window, and I'm not really sure what they're doing.
Okay, so
It doesn't look like they replaced windows, it looks like they've got a blocking around it holding that wall up or something.
I don't-
The inside is being gutted though.
So I also serve on the historic tax abatement for the committee for the Rutherford County. And we have met with that applicant about getting the tax abatement for restoration work. And at their meeting, I asked them if they had come before the city for any design review that would be necessary. And they said, well, my contractor got a permit, and that we figured we're covered. So if it-
There was a permit that came in on Main Street.
But this is maybe a loophole that has to be tightened up possibly.
But so far, I haven't seen anything that's happened outside.
I can't,
Just the block, yeah.
Just the window blocked up that's got some, I swear it looks like it's holding the wall up or something.
I don't want to speak out of any kind of, I can't disclose anything or get in front of anybody in any negative way, but the front facade of that building is endangered and they're trying to repair it, which should be just a repair. And
Yeah, that was not.
from the
mentioned.
county's point of view, you can't qualify for any tax abatement if you damage or destroy that front facade. So that was a condition of the tax credit there. But hopefully, if there's any other changes, we will see those people in front of us here soon.
Well, I've got a couple more that, like I said, we got 3 for next month, so, there's 3 for next month. Probably none of it can be administratively approved. One of them was iffy, but there's too much architectural features on there that I'm not comfortable giving that.
Well, thanks for this addition.
Yes.
Okay, Emily, thanks. Will you come again sometime?
Hey, anytime y'all need.
John, thank you
Or if
as
y'all want
well.
to come up, we'd be glad to have y'all.
And
Okay,
Jeff, thanks for getting our resources with
Oh,
us
that's-
today.
Yeah.
That's great.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We got a roll call this one too, actually.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes?
Mr. Backer,
Yes.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Panisi,
Yes.
Mr. Prince,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yeah.
Vice Chair Belcher,
Yes.
Chair Davis.
Yes.
All right.
Come on.